Welcome back. I'm so excited for this next session. We've got all things Ethereum. I think we touched 3,900 and we've got the best in the business to talk about Ethereum right here. Quick shout out to everyone in the chat. I think there's 500 on Zoom, Twitter. Again, there's nearly, I can't believe there's 1,000 people tuning in live to hear these four amazing people talk everything Ethereum. Today we've got Nick Sciberras from Collective Shift who's going to be moderating. We've got the man himself, Anthony Sassano, the king of Ethereum. We've got Nathan Gurr, an ex-senior analyst at Collective Shift, now just deploying capital on chain, mate, over at Polygon Ventures, coming in from the US. And we've got Samira, who's going back to back. Guys, I'm so excited for this session. Let's pump those ETH bags. I'm so excited. Over to you, Nick.
Yeah, perfect. I think we ticked a good time to get this panel going. I hear Ethereum's had a nice bump up. So who knows? Hopefully this is the end for the pain for Ethereum, which has been a tough 2024 to say the least. Ben did a great introduction on our panelists here, but I'll just do a quick fly around the room, just to introduce everyone here. We got Samira doing a back-to-back, and if you weren't here on the last session, she's the co-founder there at Elbaite, the Australian exchange. We got Anthony Sassano, who is Ethereum educator and creator of the Daily Gwei, and then we have Nathan Gurr, who is, as Ben said, deploying capital there at Polygon Ventures. How is everyone going today?
Good.
So perhaps we'll get right into it, really. I think the topic on everyone's lips really is Ethereum's had a really tough 2024. Really keen to know, maybe you can kick us off, Anthony, about what do you think the biggest challenges are for Ethereum heading into 2025? We know it's a big year, really. They can't afford to go slow anymore, really, or let Solana overtake them with all the competition in the blockchain space. What are you seeing out there as the number one thing Ethereum builders really need to fix to end this sideways movement?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to pinpoint just one thing. Ethereum is a really big ecosystem and is tackling its issues from multiple different places. We're tackling scale with things like layer 2s. We're tackling the fact that Ethereum kind of has a hard time getting its messaging across with different community efforts out there to improve the marketing and messaging of Ethereum. But I think generally, like, the common theme always comes back to fragmentation, whether that's fragmentation at the actual kind of user layer, using layer 1s, layer 2s. It can feel quite fragmented, but also messaging, the messaging about what Ethereum is, what it's trying to be, what ETH is as an asset. That's always been a tough ask because Ethereum truly is a decentralized ecosystem where anyone can come in and imprint their own values on Ethereum, and anyone can come in and give their own opinions on things. And there's no kind of like PR department or central agency that sets this kind of top-down message for what Ethereum is. So I think that those two things, both the fragmentation at the kind of, I guess, like user layer, at the layer 1s and layer 2s, but also at the messaging layer, are the two biggest issues Ethereum faces going forward. But in saying that, I don't consider them to be like existential issues or anything that can't be fixed. I think that that's just a general kind of, through line of any ecosystem that gets so big, because you can look at other ecosystems and even they have fragmentation in messaging once they reach a certain size. Different people have different ideas about what things are. And we actually saw a pretty big example of this back in 2017 with Bitcoin. There was a huge kind of, I guess, fragmentation there where essentially a bunch of people believe that Bitcoin shouldn't be digital gold, it should be money. So they literally forked the network off into their own network called Bitcoin Cash, and they continued on with that network, and then Bitcoin continued on as it is today. So I think that, as I said, like, once you reach a certain size, these problems do arise, but Ethereum is very well positioned, I think, across multiple different areas to tackle these head on.
Perfect. Thanks for that answer. I guess it really ties then into this argument that Ethereum and these L2s are kind of parasitic to Ethereum, and we've kind of this funny situation where Ethereum's actually delivered on some of its roadmap, which is positive, but that's come to the negative externality of, okay, now some values moving off chain. What would you, or maybe Nathan, I can pose to you, to say about this argument here? Of course, you've got a relationship there with Polygon Labs, so maybe you're best equipped to understand how these relationships work and how that impacts Ethereum.
Yeah, I think a lot of crypto natives look at it as definitely symbiotic relationship rather than parasitic. Ethereum's valuation proposition, these L2s are inheriting Ethereum security and decentralization. The L2s are increasing the total network throughput, so just adding more transactions and commerce to the database. They're contributing to base layer fee revenue, which is probably a big topic, is where does the revenue go? Does it go to Ethereum, the L2, or back to the app chain itself, and back to the users, which a lot of us in crypto want that. We know if we're a user of a platform, share the revenue with the users. So I look at it as symbiotic. And I think Ethereum's doing a good job. They're creating a modular ecosystem where each layer can kind of optimize for what they need. So kind of all those things, it's really more of a symbiotic relationship, thankfully, than parasitic.
Perfect. And then I guess maybe going to you, Samara, there, because you probably got more experience than on the exchange side. This is the one aspect that I'm really looking forward to seeing people's first, I guess, onboarding into the space. You know, really Bitcoin, Ethereum. A lot of people are really jumping the gun now, maybe going straight to meme coins or some of these alternative L1s. How are you seeing interest, you know, in Ethereum itself then on that exchange level when you're seeing a lot of the interactions with consumers?
Yeah, so we've been around now for 3 market cycles. So, and each one has had just a different market behavior, and the retail side has been totally different each market cycle. For this one, before I jump into kind of capturing the retail market behavior at the moment, I just want to just describe where we are at with Ethereum's influence in the entire crypto market in general. So it has actually reduced its market portion. So ETH is now sitting at around 10 to 15% of the entire crypto market cap. Which is actually a lot lower than what we've seen previously for Ethereum's influence in the crypto sector. So, I mean, that's probably due to a number of things. You know, ETH's price movement hasn't caught up with the same price movement that Bitcoin has had. And I mean, we are seeing some growth there in these recent days. So ETH's price action has been, I guess, really heavily watched this bull run. And so what we're seeing with the retail sector, we've got a few different sectors of retail clients. So I'll talk about something that was very interesting. So long-term ETH holders are actually very fascinating retail behaviors, right? So there are some sectors of the long-term ETH holders that are actually more, we've seen those long-term ETH holders actually liquidate their holdings. So these are wallets that have had ETH sitting for 8 years now. And so when I've asked a few of our clients that are doing this, I've asked them, you know, what is your reasoning behind it? And, you know, they're happy now with the price movement that ETH has had over the 8 years. And actually, they would rather move over to more high risk, actually. So they're looking at ETH as less high risk in terms of price fluctuation. But that's only a very subset, and mind you, a very small subset. But I think it's a very interesting subset, right? Because they've been there for so long, and they're all of a sudden changing, I guess, their minds. But now, in saying that, the majority of ETH interest right now is still that same classic story. Bitcoin and ETH is healthy to have in your portfolio. That is still a rhetoric that is being talked about and being encouraged for new investors. And we are still seeing that happen for new investors.
And maybe you, Nathan, from the venture side, is there still, I guess, that interest in the Ethereum ecosystem? Because the next question, I guess, will be, the underappreciated elements of Ethereum, which for me is the developer interest in the ecosystem itself. I think that's the biggest thing a lot of people miss when they're looking at the Ethereum story, which is the robust developers' investment in the space. We know that developers are still building, but are people still really doubling down investing in the space? And is that still continuing?
Yes, in venture circles, there's still strong interest in both Ethereum and then also all of the L2s and L3s that are coming out there now. So VCs are fine living on the edges of Ethereum at the moment in terms of innovation and kind of some technical improvements, especially around modularity for Ethereum. So the interest is high. I jotted down a couple of verticals that have been popular this year. And actually before that, investments in DeFi, just in the crypto space in general, have been a little softer this year. There's been a lot more interest in infrastructure and tech investments rather than just straight DeFi. It's really restaking and RWAs and a bit of DePIN have been like the DeFi darlings, with restaking really being the DeFi darling of this cycle so far with Eigenlayer. But in and around Ethereum, there's been quite a few metas that have gone through the VC circles. So L2s and L3s, VCs are still interested in investing in new blockchains. I think VCs have kind of already conceptually come around that we need hundreds to thousands of blockchains in global commerce, and that's totally fine. I kind of think about it like the banking system. You've got your global banks, your national banks, your regional banks, then you've got your industry-specific banks. And I think a lot of us think that it should be the same in the blockchain world. You'll have your global, like Ethereum and Solana, then you'll have your regional and your national, and then industry-specific as well, which could be seen a little bit like Base at the moment, where it's kind of an extension of their exchange. So L2s and L3s, VCs have been investing there. So that's kind of on the L2, L3 side. And actually to get those, there's been roll-ups as a service. There's Caldera and a few others who are taking the brunt of the technological development away from the company and saying, hey, we will help you spin up your L2 or L3 really easily and manage it really easily. You focus on selling your product or service. So roll-ups as a service, L2s, L3s. There's a matter of parallel EVMs. Parallel EVMs refers to parallelize the execution of transactions to improve throughput and efficiency. So that's another example of kind of a technical innovation that VCs are interested, that retail kind of goes over their head sometimes. Chain abstraction has been a big one. So chain abstraction is all about making blockchain interactions seamless across different networks. You'll also hear people talk about account abstraction, which is kind of taking away really the wallet and all the complexity that comes with using a wallet, kind of putting that in the background. Australia's actually got one of the best companies in the world at that, Infinex. Go and start to use their platform on Infinex. It's a pretty seamless kind of use case for the future of France and kind of what finance is going to look like. A couple of other popular verticals has been deep in networks on top of the Ethereum blockchain. So they want to create networks related to real world assets. But then at the end of the day, they want the security of the Ethereum blockchain to eventually house those transactions. So I think Ethereum leaning into that, we are the most secure decentralized database in the world, is key. And I think a lot of businesses are going to rely on that. So you've got the deep in networks, the real world asset platforms as well. ZK Tech has been a big one. So all of these different L2s and L3s, they're going to need ZK Tech built into them, which they don't have natively. And there's been a few organizations that are coming around and building that for these L2 and L3s. And then kind of lastly, which has been talked about a little bit more, is liquid tokens. VCs really don't talk about it publicly, but they are investing in liquid tokens on Ethereum and on L2s and L3s in lieu of investing in venture capital backable businesses. So kind of across all of those different areas, very infrastructure heavy this year for VCs, but there's still definitely strong interest in just the Ethereum ecosystem from mainnet all the way to L2s.
I think you hit the nail on the head when we talk about, I think, all the building that's going on with Ethereum that perhaps gets lost with the likes of Solana, a lot of these other blockchains that are seeing exceptional growth. And as Samira said, Ethereum's had that huge run up already. So those looking for those massive outsized gains, Ethereum's already at 400 or, large, almost, if it's going to, I think, hit the likes of 10K, it'll have to go to a 1 trillion market cap. So it's really getting up there in terms of that total market available. So it's probably short-sightedness of the market. That's the way I'm sort of seeing it in a way, because you said, robust, it's got the strongest security guarantees we have, which I think is completely underrated in the market. And is that kind of why we see a lot of real-world assets that really live on Ethereum? Stable coins live on Ethereum. A lot of these tokenized treasuries live on Ethereum. For me, that's the biggest positive for me in the market. Not sure about you, Anthony. Anything else that we haven't really hit on that you think's pretty underappreciated, that is kind of being missed by all this short-term price talk?
Yeah, so I think just springboarding off of what Nathan and Samira said, I think the common theme here is that Ethereum is maturing as an ecosystem, right? You mentioned it's already gone through that kind of hyper growth kind of period in market cap. Like ETH as an asset in market cap is at over $400 billion today. As you said, to get to something like 10,000 would be $1 trillion market cap. And the way I conceptualize it from the asset point of view is that it's a spectrum where you have money on one side, tech on the other, and then you have like everything in between. And I think in order to get over to money, you have to graduate your holder base. So Samira mentioned that a lot of these kind of older holders that have been in for like 8 years are deciding to take profits. Well, of course they are. They're up 1,000,000%, right? They've made a lot of money, and now they've got like a riskier appetite. Yeah, maybe they still keep some ETH as part of their low risk portfolio alongside BTC, but if they want those outsized gains, they're going to go to somewhere else. So for ETH to graduate from, I guess ETH is around about in the middle right now, I would say, on that spectrum. For ETH to go to where BTC is, it needs to bring in more of that institutional capital, which is what the ETFs are for, really. And we're seeing some more ETF inflows for ETH kind of coming in as price continues to go up, because a lot of this stuff does tend to follow price. But then on the Ethereum network side of things, I mean, Nathan gave you an entire overview of like most of what's happening in the Ethereum ecosystem right now. I mean, you could talk about any one of the things that Nathan mentioned for hours on end, because there's just so much building happening. But also the thing is that Ethereum as an ecosystem, especially at layer 1, has matured so much that DeFi still lives there. Like serious real world DeFi lives there and is growing at a really, really nice pace. Yes, it's not like exponential growth like some meme coin where it goes up 1,000x or something like that, but it's real long-term sustainable growth that's happening on Ethereum with stable coins, with just simple things like lending and borrowing. I mean, Aave has had an incredible year this year, and I think that really speaks to the fact that people trust Ethereum L1. It is incredibly secure, it is incredibly decentralized, and it has never gone down, right? It's never gone offline. So you have some very good properties with Ethereum L1 here. And yes, of course, you pay for it because the fees are higher, but then we have the L2 networks doing a proliferation of block space, essentially, to all these new users that are coming into the Ethereum ecosystem, which I think is the key thing when it comes to scaling via layer 2s, is that when you only have one layer, you kind of get tied down to that one layer. You're limited by that one layer, both in on the technical side, but also on the cultural side. Whereas with Ethereum, we have the Ethereum layer 1, which is pretty kind of rigid, right? It's set in its ways. It's not going to change too much over the years. There are big upgrades coming to it, but it's not going to move fast and break things, right? Whereas the layer 2s are going to do that. They're going to bring in new sets of participants, new cultures in, and expose people to ETH the asset, because by scaling Ethereum block space, we scale ETH the asset. We export ETH as a monetary asset, as a commodity money, as we like to call it in the Ethereum ecosystem. So yeah, I would say Ethereum is in its teenage years at this point, or later teenage years, where it's discovering what it wants to do, what it wants to be as an adult. And I think every ecosystem gets to that point at some point. As I said, it's a spectrum, and we want to be moving towards the Bitcoin side of things, where ETH is viewed as a institutional grade kind of a commodity money store of value, and Ethereum as a network is viewed as, at layer 1 at least, is viewed as a very mature, serious, secure platform. And then we also scale via layer 2s and scale that with cheaper fees.
Perfect. That really leans actually into one of the final questions I've got for you guys, which is trying to separate the difference between Ethereum, the ecosystem, the chain, then ETH, the asset. And I think that's where a lot of, the confusion has come in, which I'd be curious to hear about you, Samira, on the exchange side, and how you try to articulate this idea of value accruing to ETH and then differentiating ETH, the asset, from ETH, the blockchain, which I've definitely noticed has started to really happen. Just because of the nature of more value moving to L2s, and now it's probably not as a simple formula for ETH go up as it once was, and the complexities of just understanding maybe what ETH is itself can then kind of cloud the picture, which I was always curious of whether that was a big problem for the ETFs to get going. It wasn't as easy of a sell as Bitcoin is digital gold, which I think everyone gets within a second. So maybe you can let us know how you're seeing that on the exchange side.
Yeah, so it is really peculiar what's happening with Ethereum, right? Because it is trying to serve a big audience, actually. So it's a wider audience than what Bitcoin is trying to capture, which is just that like long-term wealth holding, whereas Ethereum is trying to achieve a lot more than that. The responsibility is on its coin itself, but then also a wide range of projects that are on the Ethereum network itself as well. So what I wanted to just add about this kind of conversation and seeing the difference between the Ethereum coin and the Ethereum network is that I actually want to just give a big round of applause to Vitalik, right? Because with all of the other chains that we're seeing, we're not seeing as much of a dedicated leader or vocal person that is leading the vision for the chain as we are seeing with Vitalik, right? All the way in 2021, he laid out the 6-phase roadmap, and and he actually, the community has believed in him and followed him through trying to execute this roadmap that he has created for the Ethereum blockchain. And in these 3 years, it has actually made its promise at actually achieving each of the phases goals. So we're in the second of the 6 phases at the moment, and this phase is all about scalability. And what Ethereum, the blockchain, is trying to achieve is transactions per second that would be equivalent to the transactions per second that we see with Visa and MasterCard, right? So they're trying to achieve that 100K transactions per second, like we do see in traditional payment networks. Apologies. And so I think that is a really big, remarkable difference about Ethereum. The network is just the leadership behind it is really compelling and really strong, and it's really long-term vision as well.
But maybe I'll hand it over to either you, Nathan, or Anthony, because my question is, what is, I guess, Ethereum when you explain? Is it a technology platform? Is it just a simple mechanism to maintain the chain as a commodity, as Anthony said, a commodity money, or is it a kind of just broad exposure, as that kind of piece of technology, or is it too early just to pigeonhole it as something? As we talk about, Bitcoin has evolved, Ethereum will likely evolve. What we see as Ethereum will probably evolve in 10 years. It may not be what it is today. Is it spending too much, brain power thinking about this question in trying to pigeonhole it, or do you see it as something specific in the market to explain to people?
It's kind of always marketed itself as the world's supercomputer, I believe. And I think that's accurate, but I also kind of look at it as kind of the global generic decentralized database. And this is the database where you can store any type of transaction in the most trusted block space in the world. And I think if they kind of just pound that narrative and we get large Web2 companies coming in and either building on mainnet or building their own L2 or building on an L2, we're just going to see continued validity that Ethereum's the global decentralized database kind of the future. And that's how I see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of coming off of that, Ethereum being the world computer was the original kind of vision for Ethereum. It was the original narrative put forward by the original creators of Ethereum, and it fell out of favor, I think, because people, I guess, misunderstand it. They think that if we call it a world computer, it means that it has to be the most powerful computer in the world, because it does. Like Ethereum Layer 1 has the equivalent computing power of like a consumer PC, basically, like at best, right? So I think that's where the narrative may have fallen out of favor. But if you think of it as a kind of trust machine, essentially, where everyone around the world can come permissionlessly to Ethereum mainnet or L1, as we call it, and do what they want on it, then it's really a trust machine here. I mean, it is a world computer because it is serviceable to the entire globe. And as I said, it's permissionless, decentralized. No one's stopping you. As long as you're following the rules of the protocol, you're not trying to hack it or exploit it or anything like that. As long as you're following the rules of the protocol, which are enforced by a globally distributed set of tens of thousands of full nodes around the world, then you're allowed to do whatever you want on the platform. And that's why I think we've seen such a proliferation of building on Ethereum, right, as a technology platform, is that you can build your own chain on Ethereum. Layer 2s are separate chains, but essentially what they do is they inherit Ethereum's properties. They basically use Ethereum as their base layer, and they piggyback off of Ethereum's good properties like decentralization and security, and then just settle down to it as that kind of trust machine that I mentioned there. So yeah, I think Ethereum is the world computer is a perfect way to frame it. And then ETH is the natural money, the digital money for that world computer, the decentralized money for that world computer, because ETH on Ethereum is the only asset that Ethereum issues itself. So the Ethereum protocol only issues ETH. It settles ETH. ETH is not settled anywhere else. There's no physical ETH coin. There's nothing else. It's literally all digital only. And all the tokens built on Ethereum don't have those properties. They're issued by different parties. They have different kind of controllers around them and tied to different projects. But ETH is really that neutral, credibly neutral, decentralized store of value / commodity money for the ecosystem.
That's awesome. I think you go maybe finish off, Nathan, then we'll get into the Q&A.
While we were chatting kind of on identity, Samira mentioned Vitalik, and Anthony also mentioned Aave and their founder Stani. These people are public figures who are out there pounding the pavement, kind of pushing Ethereum and its wonderful properties. You've got Hayden Adams over at Uniswap, and they're not just doing it on Twitter. Thankfully, Ethereum's at a stage now where Stani at Aave or Hayden Adams at Uniswap can walk into any boardroom on Wall Street with a lot of respect. And a lot of doors are open to them now that weren't open 4 years ago, last cycle. We've got trusted, and now we've got Eigenlayer with their CEO, and they're very respected names now that are getting into doors and boardrooms that just weren't available to the crypto world last cycle.
I think that sums it up really, that, hey, a lot of this concern about Ethereum may be overblown, which has definitely been what I've been trying to articulate to a lot of people in the market, because it's easy to get caught up in seeing Solana and Sui do these crazy moves, and everyone's looking at Ethereum waiting for it to do something similar. But high level, a lot of building going on in the space. I would be really concerned if we didn't have this in the market, and that's actually leads us into one of our Q&A questions, which is a juicy one, which is, has your confidence in Ethereum started to wane? So this anonymous here asks that a few years ago, Ethereum seemed to be kind of unchallenged in that number one spot, that number one smart contract platform. Now we've got Solana rising up. Has that changed any of your mental model at all? And what percentage would you give, of Ethereum being dethroned in a 5-year time frame, or are we as strong as ever?
It's made me more confident, to be honest, because I think personally, what these other networks are doing, they're basically building Ethereum without realizing that they're building Ethereum, because they're running into the same issues that Ethereum ran into during its growth phase. They're realizing that the modular way to scale a blockchain is the only way to scale it to the world. And I think that you're going to see more of that play out over the next few years. And as Samira mentioned, Ethereum is executing beautifully on its roadmap right now. Like Ethereum has a lot of ambitious goals, and usually people make fun of it for having like 5-10 year roadmaps. What's like, I don't understand how that's a negative to have like a long-term roadmap that you're executing on. You would be laughed out of any kind of company that if you made fun of that within a company, said, oh, this is going to take too long to do. It's like, well, yeah, it's ambitious. It's going to take time to do. And when you're doing it within a decentralized ecosystem, it adds more time to it because you have to coordinate all these different parties. But my confidence in Ethereum has only grown over time. And I really don't think Ethereum layer 1 has any competitors, to be honest. Nothing is trying to essentially be like Ethereum layer 1, that ultra secure, ultra decentralized base layer where you can trust that it's going to be there for decades to come, potentially centuries to come, if we build it if we kind of execute on those roadmap items. But then the layer 2s are just working so beautifully to scale Ethereum up and bring in new sets of users to Ethereum and really service their needs as well. And yes, there are growing pains, things like fragmentation, and fees sometimes spiking. We want to make sure that's more kind of leveled out and not spiking as much and remain cheap there. But I don't think these are existential things or anything like that. I don't think these are hard problems. I think they're going to be worked on, and they are being worked on, and they're going to be solved within a relatively short period of time. And it's good that Ethereum has competition generally, like as an ecosystem. I'm not saying these other ecosystems aren't competing with Ethereum as a whole, but when it comes to Ethereum, I think you have to kind of reason about Ethereum L1 and the L2s a little bit differently. The way I do it is that layer 2s are competing with these other networks. Layer 1 Ethereum is really competing with Bitcoin layer 1, I think, if you want to kind of frame it like that. But other than that, yeah, I'm not seeing any other network within the ecosystem that's trying to essentially even match not even get close to what Ethereum layer 1 is trying to do. And you can see that with the fact that Ethereum layer 1 has solo stakers, so home stakers, home people validating the network. As far as I know, no other network has that or has nearly as many of those kind of people, even Bitcoin at this point in time. So I think that's critically important to understanding Ethereum's market position right now, and why I believe personally that Ethereum will dominate like everything that it's trying to compete in.
And over the last 2 years, we've had this bear market, and that was the opportunity where these Ethereum competitors rose up. They hit up all the VCs. They went through the VC circles. We had probably the big, Aptos and Sui, and they really just haven't gotten the legs that I think they thought they would as a competitor to ETH. Solana's remained there, but I've gained confidence that we've gone through a bear market. We've also got Bitcoin L2s now, which probably compete more with the L2s of Ethereum. But we've been through a bear market now where essentially everybody that wanted to build an ETH competitor tried, went through the VC, got funding, and we're still at a place where L2s are dominating and Ethereum is kind of unequivocally kind of the best.
And maybe another final question we've got here on the chat in the Q&A is, I guess, risks for Ethereum. If there was one thing you were to pinpoint over that next 5 years that Ethereum has struggled to solve or has remained stagnant that could really threaten that spot as number one? Maybe each of you guys could give me the one concern you would have, that would make Ethereum slip down that ranking and really decrease your trust overall in its ability to outcompete the likes of Solana and Sui in the coming years.
So I wanted to maybe mention one thing that we haven't talked about Ethereum just yet, which is about, Ethereum, a large portion of its functionality that it with this proof of stake network that we realize is the yield opportunity that you can have with ETH. Now, I wanted to just touch on the fact that with ETH ETFs, people are saying, oh, okay, the ETH ETF influence has not been the same as the giant influence that the Bitcoin ETFs have had on the Bitcoin market itself. We need to understand that with the ETF market, with Ethereum, it's been a really rocky road to get it regulated properly, even in the ETF scope. And it is coming back down to the yield ability of ETH. So it's still not understood exactly how that yield should be shared amongst the ETF holders, amongst the management, amongst the network. Like, that is still not answered very clearly just yet. And I think that is actually a big reason why the ETH ETF hasn't really seen such a huge surge just yet. I think they're waiting to see what the result of the regulation will be. And then that will influence next moves by some of the institutional players.
Yeah, that's going to be absolutely massive. And hopefully with the change in SEC leadership, hopefully it's not too long until we see staking including in some of these products. Because after all, if you're deploying large amounts, foregoing that 3% yield compounded over multiple years is absolutely massive. Opportunity lost there on your Ethereum. Maybe hitting to you, Nathan. Anything that you're looking at for Ethereum into 2025 that either you love to see or you hope to see addressed?
Probably addressed to your question just a second ago is liquidity fragmentation. That's something that's top of mind, I think, for all of the crypto space. It's kind of frustrating when you see USDC and 5 or 6 different blockchains with their little symbol next to it. It's overwhelming, especially for normies. So liquidity fragmentation, thankfully, we've got ecosystems that are solving that with Optimism and Superchains. Polygon's got AgLayer. Avalanche has subnets. So those are all the ecosystem of L2s where it should be easy to transfer money a little bit more seamlessly than the current bridges of today between different blockchains. So liquidity fragmentation is probably my biggest worry, but thankfully we've got people working on it. I definitely follow Uniswap and what they're doing with cross-chain interoperability. They've already won the AMM game. Now they're going to probably go and win the cross-chain interoperability game. And then what I'm excited about is really kind of novel on-chain businesses coming to Ethereum and L2s and new business models being figured out. So SaaS business models, they've had a good run. Last 20 years has been SaaS and tech. It's been wonderful, but it's not quite, SaaS businesses don't quite work as well in our opinion, or in the blockchain realm. So I'm interested to see novel on-chain businesses. We always tell founders who are pitching to us that we want to invest founders that want to create token economies. Build or integrate your token into your product or service, thereby creating a token economy, and then we invest in token economies and on-chain businesses. So fascinated with the new business models that are going to be coming for running an L2, and then also the apps building on those L2s as well. And then also I'm excited to see Web 2 companies actually come in and start using Ethereum or building their own blockchains. I think we're going to get some big name brands that are trusted, who are just going to start to port over their commerce and their product or service sales from where they're normally doing them now. And then there'll be far more of these Web 2 companies performing commerce on chain, and we'll slowly port them over, through all the different Ethereum blockchains.
Mm-hmm. And just a note on the kind of, I guess, biggest risk for the Ethereum ecosystem. I think it's really just maybe potentially moving too slow. There is a spectrum here of, as I explained before, because Ethereum is actually a decentralized ecosystem, it does generally move slower because it needs to coordinate a bunch of different people all around the globe. I mean, just the core client teams, the people who build the software that run the Ethereum L1, there's like over 10 of those teams, and they all have to be coordinated in order to make changes to the Ethereum L1 network. So the main risk, I would say, which I don't consider to be a big risk, but it's always a risk, is that we just move too slowly on executing that roadmap that Samira talked about, which I don't think we're doing right now. I think we could be doing a little bit faster in some areas, but it's difficult because to do it faster means sacrificing something else, which is a lot of the times decentralization. Because if you want to move a bit faster, you have to centralize things a little bit, and yeah, it can get a little bit messy. So I think Ethereum is balancing it quite well right now, but the main risk is that we go too much to the side of the, oh, let's not change anything too quickly because we might break something, rather than sitting in maybe the middle of the spectrum of let's move fast enough to make sure that we're not stagnating, but let's also move with purpose and make sure that we don't, negatively affect the network by moving too quickly.
Awesome. Thanks for that, guys. Really great, wrap up of Ethereum, where Ethereum's going, challenges, and probably why, don't get caught up in the short-term confusion of, getting baited into Ethereum's dead. Perhaps a lot of strength in the Ethereum ecosystem for sure.
I'm going to jump in here, guys. I want to say thank you so much, Anthony, Nathan, and Samira, and Nick. Amazing work. Can you guys just quickly give a 10, 15 second, where can people find you? We're up over, by the way, 1,300 people are tuning in live right now. Twitter's going nuts. So give us a shout out. Where can people find your stuff?
Just on Twitter for me, at Sassal0x, Sassal0x. That's where I do all my ETH bull posting, and you can find links to all of my work through the Daily Gwei on there.
I'll go. So we're from Elbaite. So we are a local cryptocurrency exchange out of Australia. In Melbourne, predominantly, is where we are, is our home city. So you can find us on www.elbaite.com. And we are all about custody and securing your crypto securely for you for long-term investment purposes. So SMSFs, all of that, we've got it all covered for you.
And then you can find us, we're Polygon Ventures on Twitter. And then me personally, I'm Mr. Cartographer on Twitter. And you can find me on Twitter and also Farcaster as well. Hit me up on Farcaster.
Amazing. And you can find all Nick's work over Collective Shift. And Ethereum is up 0.1% since you guys started. So that's awesome. You did your job. No, awesome. Thank you so much, folks. Appreciate all your work. And we'll see you very soon. Thank you all.
Appreciate it.